Dr. S.D. Tripathi, Assistant Professor, Department of Surgery and Radiology, Mumbai Veterinary College, Parel. This is my contact details. And Mumbai Veterinary College comes under Maharashtra Animal and Fisheries Sciences University, Nagpur. And all of you are welcome to this 4-day online certificate course on basics of small animal laparoscopy. And welcome once again in these pandemic times of COVID-19, and I hope everyone is doing fine. So I will be talking about the technical considerations, dry lab, and the equipment maintenance. So friends, the first question itself comes, why do we need laparoscopy? And this question has been posed for times immemorial. And Nadav in the year 1925, he posed this question, and I quote him, as to how often is not the surgeon or the diagnostician confronted with a case in which the difficulties of reaching a decision urge the surgeon to get a glimpse of the body interior. And even today, the surgeon or a clinician is faced with these kind of problems, where he would like to look into the area or the organ and see what actually is going wrong with it, or what actually is happening with it, or how actually it is in the body. So dear friends, endoscopy solves this question for a lot of reasons. And this word has been derived from the Greek with the prefix endo, which means inner, and scopin, which means to observe inside with a purpose. And it is now broadly classified into flexible endoscopy, wherein there is a tube or lumen present in the organ, and the device can bend around the corners of the organ. And we have got gastroscopy, bronchoscopy, and cystoscopy for it. Then we have rigid endoscopy, where there is high quality medical grade telescope, which do not bend, but which give a varying field of view. And then they are classified as laparoscopy, when we look into the abdomen, thyloroscopy, when we look into the teat canal, thoracoscopy, when we look into the thoracic cavity. So different names have been given now. So this is a photograph of a flexible endoscope, and this is a laparoscope, which we will be making use of during this course of 4 days. So we are all used to doing surgery in a general conventional setup, wherein we do everything with our hands. We all know that for a surgeon, he has to have a lion's heart, he has to have a lady's finger, he has to have an eagle's eye, and many times it is the fingers which provide him the information for him to do his procedure. However, in laparoscopy, some special skills are required, and it is a combination of knowledge of the procedure, of the instruments, of the equipments, judgment as to what kind of case should be taken for laparoscopy. It's not a necessity that since you know laparoscopy, each and everything has to be done by laparoscopy only. You have to take a judicious decision as to what kind of case is to be taken for surgery. Of course, we can do the simplest of procedures to the most complicated procedures. But during this training program, we are basically concerned with the basic techniques of laparoscopy. And as we keep on practicing, this technical ability will develop. And that will only happen if we start with learning the training with the basics of laparoscopy. So some of the technical considerations that we should be aware of in laparoscopy will include the ergonomics, the task analysis, the engineering, the psychology, and the hand-eye coordination. Though I have mentioned it in the last, but this is the primary aspect of becoming a laparoscopic surgeon from a general surgeon. What is ergonomics? It is basically an interface between the man and machine so as to improve our task. In general surgery or conventional surgery, we are using our hands for doing the procedure. Here, an additional appendage has been provided to us. An additional instrument like the laparoscope, the working instruments are in our hands, and we are not directly touching the animal, but it is the instruments which are touching it. And this, we are seeing it on a screen. Rather than directly in communication with the organ, we have to see whatever we are doing on a screen. So it is basically an interface of all these technology and an optics for us to carry out laparoscopic procedures. And many times it is these improper ergonomic methods which can lead to a lot of complications. So we should understand some basic points as to the ergonomics. Now in ergonomics, the first step is the OT table. We are used to standing on the table and doing the procedure at our elbow height. So in laparoscopy also we have to mimic the same aspect. But why it becomes difficult? Because we have an added appendage of a instrument in our hand. So it is very important for us to understand how to manage the table height. This table height can be electronically or mechanically managed. You can move up, you can move down, so that your handle or your handle of the instrument, it is at elbow level of your hand. Only if it is at your elbow level of your hand will you be able to perform the procedures in a proper fashion. So it is very important. Again, you should be able to turn the table in a V-shaped fashion or flatten it or move it in right or left position depending upon the procedure that you are doing. Again, many a times if this is not possible with the table, then you will have to provide a stand. A stand has to be provided to the surgeon so that he is at a height wherein the instruments come, or the handle of the instrument comes to his elbow level. So this is the most important aspect in the ergonomics of a laparoscopic procedure. Next is the coaxial arrangement and alignment. What is this coaxial arrangement and alignment? It simply means that the eye of the surgeon, the organ that we are interested in operating, and the monitor where we are seeing this organ, they all should be in one straight line. The surgeon should not make any tilt of his head or hand on an average, because if he does that, then there will be fatigue set in. The performance of the surgeon will be decreasing. The performance of the surgeon will be affected. And it has been known by studies that even a 15-degree tilt of the head can reduce the performance of the surgeon by 25%. So it should be one straight line. We should be able to see the organ of interest in the straight line of our eye onto the monitor. Again, how far the surgeon should stand from the patient or from the monitor? Ideally, studies show that the distance of the surgeon standing from the monitor should be around 5 times the diagonal length of the monitor. So if the diagonal length of the monitor or the TV that you have is say 21 inches, so the surgeon should be standing at 105 inches. Why should he be doing that? Well, our body has been provided, our eyes have been trained in such a fashion that if this distance is followed, then the image that is found on the screen, it will be focused onto the macula of our eye. And the macula, as we all know, is rich in cones. As a result, the spatial resolution, the contrast becomes very, very easy. So if you are anything near or anything away, again, it will interfere with your visibility of the organ. So you have to make an effort that you are at a distance of around 5 times the diagonal length of the monitor. Then other important thing is the level of the screen of the monitor. As I told you earlier also, that there has to be a coaxial arrangement. The surgeon, the patient, the organ and the monitor should be one straight line. Now, on an average also, if you sit down and just try to relax, you will realize that your eyes tend to look down most of the times. So while the monitor can be at a straight line as in the eye of the surgeon, if it is 10 to 15 degrees below, again it enhances your visibility. OT light has to be around 20 lux. If it is more than that, then it will cause severe glare. Again, it will interfere with your procedure. Now we should know the manipulation angle. We will see the diagram also what this manipulation angle is. It is simply the distance between two instruments. Once you enter into the abdominal cavity, your instruments, working instruments, should be at 60-degree angle to each other. Even normally also, if we are clapping, if we are knitting, you will find our both hands, they will meet at each other at around 60 degrees. And that helps do our job in a proper fashion. In the same way for laparoscopy also, the manipulation angle should be around 60 degrees. Port placement, most of the times contralateral position has to be followed. What is this contralateral position? It simply means that the camera is in the center and then the working ports are on the sides, on either side of the camera. Most of the times for gynecological procedures, several other positions are also indicated. However, for a basic laparoscopic surgeon, when he starts doing surgery, he should start with the contralateral position. He should start with the fact that he has got 3 ports, single port, double port. Various other methods are also available, but again, that becomes high-end surgery. It is better you develop your hand-eye coordination first by following the contralateral port placement. Elevation angle, the angle or the position at which the organ, the patient's body is placed, and the angle at which your instrument is entering into the body, it should form an angle of around 30 degrees. Anything more than that, you will find the hands will become straight, or if it is less than that, you will find the handle will touch onto the table. Again, it will interfere with your movement. So an effort should be made that it is around 30 degrees. Again, azimuth angle. Now this angle, if you form a imaginary line between the camera and the instrument, you will find it should be around 30 degrees to 30 degrees. Anything more than 30 degrees or anything less than 15 degrees, again, interfere with your movement and instrument handling. We will just see this photograph, what this actually means. So you will find in the first photograph, what I am shown is that this is the elbow position in which the patient should be. This is what the height of the patient should be, so that the instruments are at, the handle of the instrument is at elbow level. Now this, if suppose this is the patient, then the line drawn from the patient and the line drawn from the instrument entering into the abdomen, that should form 30 degrees. That will make your procedure as good as your normal surgery. Once you enter into the abdominal cavity, you will find you have your Caesar or you have your bipolar cautery forceps. If you bring them together, they should roughly form an angle of around 60 degrees. And that is called as your manipulation again. Again, that will make your job easy. Now, if you see this photograph, you will find the camera is in the center and the 2 ports are at the side. If I draw a straight line from the camera, imaginary line, you will find this angle between the instrument and the camera, it forms around 30 degrees. If I combine both of them, it becomes 60 degrees. So this is what is your azimuth angle. So if we keep this thing in mind, if we plan our things in such a particular fashion, then we will realize that our surgical learning technique as well as the surgical procedure becomes very, very easy. We will not have to play with the instruments. We will not have to, give undue manipulation or undue force onto the instruments, and we can actually mimic the normal conventional surgical methods here. So next is your task analysis. In surgery, we know it is nothing but cutting, shutting, and forgetting. But in order to cut, there are a lot of things that we have to take care into mind. The patient position, the patient's condition, the anesthesia, what instruments we have, what kind of approach we will be following, what kind of ligatures we will be using, what kind of instruments we will be using, in what way we will be positioning the patient. All these steps come into your executional steps. Procedure is simply you go to the organ, ligate the blood vessel or ligate the organ that you are interested in, cut it and try to bring it out. But the executional steps are varied. Each and every step, though we are exporting conventional surgery, for laparoscopic surgery, these conventional steps become that much more important. Why? Because a laparoscopic surgeon is not only handling the patient, he is also handling the instrument, he's also handling the camera, he's also handling the monitor, he's also handling the endoflator, he's also handling the electrosurgical machine. So these things become much more important for a surgeon to be aware of. The surgeon has to be spatially aware what are the things he's dealing with. And this is what is your task analysis. So every time when you start with your basic practice also, this thing should be noted down on a piece of paper and see to it that you are actually paying attention to these things and then carrying out your procedure. That will make your job very easy. Engineering, again, as I spoke earlier also, a laparoscopic surgeon, he's surrounded by electronic equipments. So you should know what type of camera he's using, whether it is a single chip or a 3-chip camera, what type of monitor he's using, whether it's a TV monitor, LED monitor, what kind of light source he's having, whether it is halogen, xenon, LED, what kind of insufflator is there, whether it is a analog insufflator, whether it is a digital insufflator, what is the flow rate, how much of gas is passing through, what is the pressure that has been maintained. So these points we will have to keep in mind. What kind of energy source we are using, whether we are using a monopolar, bipolar, vessel sealing equipment. If we are using a monopolar, we have to make sure that the patient plate is attached. Otherwise, we may get into complications. And then suction and irrigation. In case there is a bleeding or a hemorrhage, you should know to operate this instrument. Again, when you are operating this instrument, there may be loss of pneumoperitoneum. So you should be able to handle each of this. So a laparoscopic surgeon actually has to become a pseudo engineer. But then it's not difficult. Laparoscopy simply means lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of practice. You keep analyzing things in your mind again and again, again and again, again and again. And presto, these things will become very, very easy for you. The psychology of the laparoscopic surgeon. Anyone can become a laparoscopic surgeon, that's for sure. However, the only thing required is you should be loyal, humble, and gentle. Very important for you to be gentle when you are handling the organs in the abdominal cavity. And in this, basically young surgeons who are very adept in extracurricular activities, or young people who are very adept in extracurricular activities, like playing different types of online games, different types of software, music, different types of games, they tend to develop these skills much faster. However, an anxious, angry, or a person who continues to blame others for any mistake, many a times, will find it hard to develop it. Not basically unfit, but he will find it hard to develop it. So I think there are a lot of young people also involved in this basic training. And yes, you are doing a great thing. If you are involving yourself at a young age, you have a much greater chance of developing these techniques in a far better fashion. It's not a necessity that you should have prior experience of general surgery, only then you will do a laparoscopic surgery. If you are able to develop these skills, hand-eye coordination, even not having too much of general surgery experience may also help you. But of course, if you are a general surgeon, definitely you are way ahead of any other surgeon. No doubt about it. Now, we all know that in general surgery also, if there is adequate training, there will be less and less and less of complications. But then how do you train for a laparoscope? Cost of equipment is exorbitant. Medical legal cases, ethical issues are there. How can someone who has not done enter into laparoscopy unit and start doing surgery like that? And that is the reason why there is a demand for creating surgical training models. And this can be in the form of box trainers, virtual reality stimulators, animal models, etc. Now, if you start your learning of laparoscopy with these models, this will help you in learning the procedures, maintaining the skills, and again, you will be aware what kind of possible complications can happen in a live surgery, and your mind will be tuned to take care of it. So this is a dry lab unit which we have in our center. You will find there is the monitor, and then there is the dome shaped endo trainer which has got various holes in it, and there is one camera which is fitted at the bottom. Now, if the surgeon is standing in front of the dome, you will find his eye will be at the level of the monitor. The camera is pointing to the structures or the instruments that is holding, and that forms your coaxial alignment. Again, we will see during our other lectures also how actually the surgeon should be standing. Now, all the technical aspects that I discussed, whether it is ergonomics, whether it is your psychology, whether it is your engineering training, whether it is your task analysis, all these things can be mastered in the dry lab itself. Why? It can have, stimulators which are attached with the computer. Even without computers, you don't have, AI stimulars or anything. Still, with the monitor, the camera, you can carry out your learning procedure. You can start with the basics and move to the complicated procedures. So a dedicated dry lab is the primary requirement for any basic laparoscopic surgeon. Now this training can be done in dry and wet models. Dry lab simply means that we are not making use of any tissue, any body as such, whether it is a cadaver or whether it is a live animal. We are simply doing our procedures on dry things. So it could be a piece of paper, it could be a piece of plastic balls, it could be plastic cups, it could be paper, it could be some vegetables. That is the reason why they will help you in first understanding how this depth perception is to be improved. In laparoscopy, you are doing a 3-dimensional procedure onto a 2-dimensional screen. So the depth perception becomes a problem. And if you are practicing in the dry lab, your depth perception improves. You have less chance of touching the organ. So this feeling of the fingers is lost. You have to touch the organ with the instrument. So if you use the instrument and try to pick up these pieces of plastic or rubber in the dry lab, you will get to know how much of pressure you should be applying onto a tissue. You will also know in what way this dome shape is causing the restriction in the freedom of the movement. In conventional surgery, the whole field is available to you. But in laparoscopy, the freedom of movement is hampered. So it will train you how to make use of that limited space. And also it will help you in developing the right hand-eye coordination. What your eye sees, your finger should be, your hand, your elbow should be able to mimic at that instance itself. What you are doing with your hand, your eye should be seeing it and your brain should be giving you the input to carry out the necessary action. So this hand-eye coordination is very important. It's very easy to say. It's very easy. Hand-eye coordination, how much time it takes? But no, my dear friends, it can really take a lot of times if you are not careful. And that is the reason why in task analysis, as I told you, each and every step you have to memorize. When you are taking a surgeon's knot or a square knot, you are not aware how you are, passing the, just fix in your mind that yes, 2 turns you are taking here, 1 turn you are taking here, and the knot has been taken. But in laparoscopy, you actually have to do a slow motion movement of these procedures so that you are able to carry out the ligation. So this task analysis and repetition is very, very important for you to develop a proper hand-eye coordination. These training modules, we can use silicone models or non-silicone models. At our center, we are basically using the paper, elastic, rubber, fruits, or sometimes cadaver tissue sourced from the abattoir in order to go ahead with the training. And this we basically do in the dome step structure of the endotrainer that I had shown you. Now, I explained earlier also that there are a few port openings and their distance are fixed so that you can train it at different distances and see how your hand movements are going, how your elbow movements are going. All these things can be seen. So you have to start with performing basic manual skills and then move on to the more complex. Laparoscopy, when you start, basically it seems so easy that you are confident that you can do anything and everything. And the moment you move to a more complicated procedure, the first complication occurs and you leave laparoscopy. So you have to train your mind in such a fashion that even if someone wakes you up from sleep and tells you to do a lap OBE or lap diagnostic, you should be able to do it. So that thing is very important. Only then you move to complex movements, because only then you will be able to understand what actually this elevation angle is, what actually is this manipulation angle, what this azimuth angle we were talking about actually is. You have to do it again and again in the dry lab to actually understand it. So you can start with crossing over your hands, picking one plastic ball from one plate to the other, moving it to the other thing, trying to attach that plastic or insert that plastic ball into the toothpick. Things like that will have to be done. You can make paper slits of different shapes and sizes and try to cut it. And you can also even define the various procedures that you are going to do and arrange it on a piece of cardboard as such, and then try to do that. Again, that will enhance your skills. So you should learn handling the instrument for a longer period of time in dry lab. A lot of times we get trainees in the dry lab and they feel so confident, sir, direct suturing, we should learn suturing, we should learn this, but they forget it is these basics that should be, just like, you do, once you are trained to be a driver, you don't have to learn where the clutch is, where the gear is, where the brake is. You just know it, your body does it. In the same fashion, you have to do these basic steps in so many times that, you can adapt it for live surgeries and also for complicated surgeries. You should critically evaluate every time how much time you are taking for picking up the things, how much time you are taking to cut the things, how much pressure you are applying onto the paper or the tissue that you are trying to cut. So it should be critically evaluated. So in dry lab, if you learn it, you will get to become a trained laparoscopic surgeon. Even gynecological, urological, all these procedures can be learned. But the learning curve is very steep. It doesn't happen in one day, in 2 days. It can take months, it can take years to actually start understanding the nitty-gritties of it. You should focus on handling of instruments, most important. Only if you do that, handling is proper, how to turn the instrument, how to rotate the instruments, how to angulate the instruments, only then your dry lab training can be useful. So this is our training. As I told you, we'll see on the screen, there are the plates with the balls present in there. There is the toothpick, then this is the dome, and then you can stand straight and carry out with your procedure. Now we'll come to the next topic of equipment maintenance. Now we know that laparoscopic instruments, they are optical instruments, they are electrical equipments, and they can be very easily damaged by heat. So sterilization or autoclaving is not needed or not feasible all the time. Also, the turn-up procedure can be longer. So in such a situation, you should know how to assemble and disassemble your laparoscopic instruments. You should know how to clean your equipments. And all these equipments can be kept in 2% glyceraldehyde. Now this 2% glyceraldehyde for 20 minutes is the most popular technique. You can use your camera head, camera cable, lights, fiber optic cable, telescope, everything can be kept in the glyceraldehyde solution and cleaned. Other method is ethylene oxide, but again it takes 10 hours to do the procedure. It causes damages also. So most of the times it is glyceraldehyde that we use at our setup. And in the last 10 years, I must tell you with all humility that we have had negligible event of any post-operative complications. Now this glyceraldehyde solution, once it is prepared, normally say around 9 ml can be added to 450 ml of solution. Active solution of 9 ml is added to 450 ml of bucket of solution, and then this solution can be kept for 15 days or 20 days, or it can be used for at least 15 to 20 surgeries. But even if you do 20 surgeries in a day, you have to discard it, or you do 20 surgeries in 20 days, you have to discard after 20 days. So we will just see a live demo of this video in the dry lab.
Welcome again, dear friends. Now we have understood that laparoscopy, there is loss of depth perception. We are doing most of our procedures in a 3-dimensional space. But when we are doing laparoscopy, then 3-dimensional space gets reduced to a 2-dimensional space. Again, there is no direct contact of our hands with the organ that we are interested in. There is an interface of an instrument through which we have to operate upon. Also, rather than directly seeing these structures with our own eyes, we have to see these organs onto a screen. So it is very important for us to develop the hand-eye coordination. Only when we have very well hand-eye coordination, we will be able to perform our laparoscopic procedures without any complications or any ethical issues. So in order to develop that hand-eye coordination, it is important to have a dry lab. Now this dry lab is basically consisting of your endotrainers. You can see an endotrainer, which is a stomach or abdomen shaped endotrainer. It has got 6 holes present in it, through which you can insert the trocars. Okay. Now these trocars, you will realize that they can be placed as per your requirement. So the kind of procedure that you want to do, the kind of training that you want to do, you can manipulate the entry of these trocars. Other important thing is the ergonomics. Now you will realize if you are standing in this particular endotrainer, your instruments, they are at your elbow level. So what happens? It becomes easier for you to operate upon procedures. You will find the instruments which when they are entering into the abdominal cavity or they are entering into the phantom, they are at approximately 60 degrees to each other. That makes your handling of the tissues or your handling of the organs, your handling of the instruments very adequate. This also makes sure that you do not have undue pressure on your shoulders or on your elbows. Also, you are not stressed. You don't have to bend your neck here and there. So this ergonomic, wherein your instrument is at your level of the elbow, the instruments in the abdominal cavity are at 60 degrees to each other, the camera is in the center, this can help improve you have a better hand-eye coordination. In this phantom, you can make use of your scissors, your graspers, you can also make use of your needle holder and various types of bowel graspers to learn various techniques like intracorporeal suturing. You can also learn extracorporeal suturing. You can also start basically first with holding of the tissue. So you will find in this endotrainer there are plates with rubber cups and plastic balls along with the toothpick. So you can first try to hold these instruments your toothpick, then try to pull out your plastic caps, change their position, try to pull this plastic balls into this toothpick, try to play various games. You can also have a sheet of paper wherein various shape diagrams are present. You can keep it in the endotrainer and again try to cut in that particular shape. You should be aware how much effort you have to take in order to make a clean cut. If you do this practice in the dry lab for a period of 36 hours continuously or in short spans of 1 to 2 hours for a period of a month or so, you will have a wonderful hand-eye coordination, and the same skills that you have learned in the dry lab, they can also be incorporated in your wet lab, and you will the proper fashion. So dear friends, I hope this dry lab will be made available at your end, and you can practice first on this dry lab and then move on to the wet lab. Thank you very much.
So friends, you saw in this how the surgeon can form a coaxial standing position, how the instruments can be inserted into the demo endotrainer, and you can see that these instruments will be forming an angle of around 60 degrees. And also you can pick up these small things first from one box to the other, try to pick up the rubber balls, then you can play with paper. So different kind of things can be done so that you are able to carry out your training program here. The longer you spend in the dry lab, the better you will become as a laparoscopic surgeon. Now I will also show you a small video of the various instruments We have been, you have heard about the ports, you have heard about the Veres needle, you have heard about the camera, you have heard about the grasping instruments. We will see how they are to be assembled and disassembled in this particular video.
Good morning, friends, and welcome back once again to this 4-day online training course on basics of small animal laparoscopy. I am Dr. Santosh Mani Tripathi, Assistant Professor, Department of Surgery and Radiology. Basically, in laparoscopy, some common procedures that are performed are diagnostic laparoscopy, laparoscopic oophorectomy, laparoscopic turbidectomy, laparoscopic vasectomy, etc. And the instruments that I will be describing today, all these instruments can be made use of for all the procedures that I have just mentioned. So the first thing is to enter into the abdominal cavity so that we can create the space for our surgical procedure. And that is done by means of creating a pneumoperitoneum, by inserting gas into the abdominal cavity. So, in order to create that space, we have got the Veres needle. This Veres needle is available in various sizes, 8 cm, 10 cm, 12 cm, and 20 cm. And depending upon the use, the lengths vary. However, for small animal practice, 10 cm Veres needle is very effective in carrying out most of the laparoscopic procedures. The Veres needle, it has got two parts. The outer sheath, which has got
So this is the Veres needle that you are seeing,
as you can see,
and this Veres needle has got two parts: the stylet with the pointed end, sorry, the sheath with the pointed end, and the stylet with the blunt end and a hole in it. And this stylet is attached with the sheath by a spring action.
The blunt end will always be ahead of the pointed end. The moment you attach it to the surface of the body, what happens is, because of the spring action of the inner stylet, it will be pushed up, and as soon as you enter into the abdominal cavity, the blunt end will enter first, thereby preventing any injury to the abdominal structures. I can show it by this particular resin sheet. Just see it here. As soon as I enter into the abdominal cavity, I get a typical click sound. Why? This is because of the fact that the valve is now touching the sheath of the Veres needle. And this also gives me an idea that I have entered into the abdominal cavity and that I did not press any further. If I have to open it, I can open it and disassemble it in this way. So these are the two parts as I just discussed. The outer sheath with the pointed end, the inner stylet with the blunt end. It has also got an opening present so that air can enter into the abdominal cavity. At the tip of the stylet is the valve, which I can manage so as to allow the flow of air. If this valve is in straight line, that means air can enter into the abdominal cavity, and if it is in a perpendicular line, then the valve is closed. So the first step of Veres needle insertion, that is the blind step, can be carried out safely if we are aware of the assembly and disassembly of the Veres needle. Thereafter, the place where we have inserted the Veres needle, most of the times for the procedures that I have described, this Veres needle insertion is just parallel to the umbilicus, and it can be just above the umbilicus towards the xiphi sternum. Once you have inserted the Veres needle and created the pneumoperitoneum, then you need to insert the camera port. So for that, you can increase the incision where you have inserted the Veres needle, and then you can insert a 6 mm camera port or a 11 mm camera, again depending upon the procedures. Most of the times, if you are using the 11 mm camera port, you can even extrude out the organs that you are interested in after the surgical procedure. But for most of the common procedures, we are using the 6 mm Turnanian cannula, which is a threaded cannula. You can see the threads all over the shaft, and it has got a Luer lock at the top. This Luer lock, you will have to press down so that you are able to allow the entry of the telescope without any damage to the lens of the telescope. Again, it has got a valve at the shaft with the help of which you can allow entry of the air into the abdominal cavity. If it is in perpendicular position to the shaft, that means it is open, and if it is parallel to the shaft, that means it is closed. When you are inserting this port, you have to make sure that the valve is open. So when you insert this port through a screw action into the abdominal cavity, as soon as it enters into the abdominal cavity, you will find the air will be leaking out through this valve, which will give you a hiss sound, which will again indicate that yes, you have entered into the abdominal cavity and you did not press the port any further. Once you have entered into the abdominal cavity, you can attach this valve to the silicone tube of the endoflator and carry out with the pneumotomy. If you don't want any further increase, then you can just close it. Okay. So again, this lever lock that I told you, it can be, if you press it, then it opens the valve here. You can see the valve. Okay, so you should try to check this valve, and you should get this rubbery feeling. Which will indicate that the valve is properly functioning. If it gets a metal feel, then it means that the protective sheath which is present on the valve, this protective sheath which is present on the valve is damaged. So when you want to use it, you will attach the head to the shaft, you will keep the valve open, and then you will enter into the abdominal cavity through smooth screw motion of the port. Once you have entered into the abdominal cavity, thereafter you will insert your telescope. Now this telescope can be 0 degree, 30 degree and 45 degrees, and also they can be of various length. The details will be explained by my colleague. So once you enter into the abdominal cavity, you will examine the whole of the abdominal cavity and you will identify the area where you will again insert the working ports, so that you are able to insert your working instruments into the abdominal cavity. So for inserting the working instruments, the ports which are available, they are again of 6 mm threaded cannula. They can be plain also, but ideally if you are using a threaded cannula, it is advantageous in 2-3 ways. Because of its threaded shaft, it can remain in its position for a longer period of time. While removing the working instruments, it will not get displaced, and again it has got two parts, the shaft and the head. So this head has got a valve inside, inner rubber valve that can be attached. Now this inner rubber valve, it will prevent the leakage of the gas, and then it can be covered with the rubber cap at the top. Again, the advantage of these rubber caps and valve is that they prevent leakage of air through the cannula. So how do you do it? The moment I enter into the abdominal cavity, you will find the valve has covered your instrument, so no leakage is happening. And once you remove it, again the valve goes back to its normal position, thereby preventing further leakage. So depending upon the procedure, you can decide the number of working ports that you will be inserting inside. They can be 1, 2 or 3. Ideally, for most of the procedures like diagnostic laparoscopy or ovarectomy or cryptorchidectomy, a 3-port technique is used, wherein the central camera port is put and on the lateral sides you have your working ports. Having understood the Veress needle insertion, the camera port, the working ports, we will now move to the various working instruments that we make use of. So we have got the scissors, the laparoscopic scissors, the Maryland grasping forceps with a lock at the end. Then we have grasping forceps, bowel graspers, again with lock provided at the handle. And we can also have the biopsy forceps, as you can see here. This is the biopsy forceps, which has got a cup-like cavity. All these instruments have got three parts. They have got the insert, they have got the sheath, and they have got the handle. So this assembled instrument has got an electrode at the top to which the monopolar cautery can be attached. It has got the handle. It has got a rotator with the help of which you can rotate the instrument as per your requirement. And it has got a push button. Once you attach this push button, you can open the instrument. You can disassemble the instrument. So this push button helps you in assembly and disassembly on the instrument. And also there is a cavity present just ahead of the rotator, and this can be made use of to clean the instrument properly. You can flush distilled water or normal saline through this cavity and thereby wash the cavity thoroughly. So now I will just show you how we will disassemble the instruments. Now these, the electrode, the push valve as well as the rotator is available in your scissor also, it is available in your grasper also, it is available in your biopsy forceps also. So if you want to disassemble it, you just press onto the push button, the sheath comes out. Once the sheath comes out, you can remove the insert from it. So now you have got your handle, your insert and your sheath. So these are the three parts for the scissor. Again the same parts for the artery forceps. The only thing is that the artery forceps has got a lock arrangement at the handle. So once you have grasped the object, you can just lock it depending upon your requirement. And once you want to release it, you can just open the lock and release the instrument. The most important part is your bipolar grasping forceps. Now again, this bipolar grasping forceps also has the three parts. It has got the handle, it has got a sheath, and it has got the insert here. You can see the insert coming out once I press the handle. So if I want to open it, first I will have to descrew it with the handle. And then once this is done, I will again press the push button and remove. So the handle is separate from your sheath and insert. And after this, I will just remove the insert. And you can see my bipolar forceps, and then my sheath, and then my handle. When I want to assemble it, again I will do the same thing. I will enter into the sheath, and then I will go into the cavity that has been provided, push the insert further, screw it, and then my instrument is again ready for me. I have to just attach the cable which will be connected to the cautery machine, and I can operate the current that is to pass with the help of the foot pad that is provided along with the machine. So my dear friends, these are the working instruments for a laparoscope. You should have a Veress needle, you should have the 6 mm or 11 mm cannula for telescope insertion. You should have telescope of various sizes. Mostly we are using the 0 degrees for most of our procedures. Of course, for complicated procedures, 30 degrees, 45 degrees can also be used. And then you should have your scissor, your grasping forceps, and then your cautery. All these instruments need to be assembled and disassembled after every laparoscopic procedure. They need to be thoroughly cleaned, and then they can be put into the 2% glutaraldehyde solution for 20 minutes or 4 hours or 24 hours, depending upon the number of surgeries that we are required to do. Remember, most of the laparoscopic surgeries, they require a high grade disinfection. they do not require to be autoclaved all the time. 2% glyceraldehyde can kill all the viruses, all the bacteria. The only thing, it is not a sporicide. So latest new advanced disinfectants are available which act as sporicidal also. I would like to show you this vessel sealing equipment also. This is another energy source that can be made use of for high-end surgical procedures like gastric plication surgeries that we perform at our center. It can be 10 mm, it can be 5 mm. Now this has the capacity to cauterize as well as cut the instrument at the same time. So you will find it has got the handle, it has got the insert for the cable which you will attach to the vessel seal instrument, and then it has got the jaws, and these jaws, they can be used to cauterize or coagulate the tissue first, and then they can be locked to cut the tissue. This makes the job very, very easy. So my dear friends, this was all about the working instruments that we will be using laparoscope. I hope it will help you for your laparoscopy procedures. Thank you very much.
Okay friends, welcome again once again. So this was a little introduction of the various laparoscopic instruments that we will be using for our surgeries. The optical aspect and the other electronic equipment aspect we will be discussing tomorrow in our lecture in the morning, and my colleague Dr. S.V. Gaikwad would be giving you the presentation on that. So this is all that I have for you, and I thank you everyone for being a participant in this training program, and also I thank Dr. Arvind Chauhan and Dr. Salaka Salvekar for taking so much of efforts. And I cannot end this presentation without showing my gratitude to my great teachers and Dr. L.B. Sarkade sir, Dr. G.S. Khandekar sir, Dr. D.U. Lokhande sir for continuously having faith, and whatever little bit I know, it is only because of their support that I'm able to do it. I'm also thankful to all the university authorities, right from our Honorable Vice Chancellor sir, to our Dean and Director sir, Director of Research, Director of Extension, our Associate Dean sir, for being so accommodative and giving me the opportunity to be a part of this training program. Thank you very much. Thank you one and all. And I believe, I hope, I pray that we get rid of this pandemic of COVID-19 as quickly as possible, and we are again back to our normal self. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you very much.